The world is never prepared for a crisis. Are you? Well, you came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today we're going to look at the real economic impact of the crisis we are dealing with today. Let's begin. Las Vegas casinos are turned into food banks for thousands of unemployed workers line up for blocks as analysts call the city the epicenter of the financial crisis. This is really big right now because we're seeing it all over the United States. It's a crisis that continues to get worse, and it is nowhere more apparent than the lineups that we're seeing all over the place. People are waiting for hours and hours on end to get food. The most basic necessity, and they're struggling because perhaps they have been too indebted, perhaps they were living paycheck to paycheck. They couldn't make ends meet for one reason or another, and now they need to eat. This is really serious because you already had 40 million plus people on food stamps, and here we are today dealing with something like this. It's unbelievable. New vehicle sales continued downward slide in April, but you don't have to worry at the bottom here. April is likely the bottom for auto sales, so hopefully there's only room for improvement here. How in the world did they ever come to this conclusion? Check this out. But with employment and consumer confidence at new lows, the question remains, will people be in the position to purchase new cars? Well, you've got bigger problems to worry about than if you should get that new vehicle come May. This is not really something that they try to inform people with. It's propaganda. They want to put out this information to make it look pretty. I'm always asked on a daily basis, why don't you give positive information? Well, why don't you just look at the truth? Just look at the reality of the situation. Yes, there's some good news coming out. There's lots of videos out there about kittens. That information is there. That funny stuff is there. Check it out. There's so many videos about that. But if you want reality, you gotta dig deep. April is a record down month for the auto industry. You got to understand how bad this has been on top of an already declining market. So throughout 2019, it was heading down, but we got to 2020 and it simply fell off a cliff. The auto industry, it employs a lot of people, and that's on a global level, whether they're working in the manufacturing side, the sales side, and everything in between. They've got some serious problems ahead. Now, this is important to understand. I've talked about this many times before. When you look at what these different countries, states, anywhere really, where they have assets, they'll be forced to sell them off to the globalist elite. This is the way it's been working. Look, Greece as a very, very good example. They had to sell off their islands. They were selling off airports. The same thing happened in many other places as well. Getting rid of the precious assets and moving them into the hands of the elite. And this is one instance where we could see that happen yet again, and being on a widespread scale. Every major American art museum is sitting on assets that from the outside look inviolable. They're called works of art. If they're by Vincent van Gogh and so on, they might be worth tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars. But they might be in storage. 90% of what they have might be in storage because they're only going to put out certain things at certain times. Now, of course, that represents a lot of money, and so they can sell off these works of art to bring in some revenue. But this, of course, is something they could do, and they're free to do that. Whatever, really doesn't matter to me. But what it shows you is that the assets, whether it's an airport, whether it's a work of art, you can clearly see where the money is going, and it isn't flowing into the hands of the average individual. The rich are getting richer, and everybody else is going for the big slide. This is something I really want to cover in depth, but I'll just try to give you the summary right now. Airbnb racks up hundreds of millions in losses. Home sharing giant considers raising capital, plans to go public this year in disarray. But what does it all mean? Now, when I say Airbnb, we're really just looking at short-term rentals in general, okay? But I'll use Airbnb just to generalize. What you have is all of these different super hosts. And basically, a lot of these people, they buy properties specifically to rent on on Airbnb. This is a big money maker depending on the areas that they're in. This allows them to profit. They use the system. Everything works out, but they're highly leveraged. As long as you get people in every night, as long as you can pay the bills, it's all going to work out because you're going to make more money than what your mortgage is at. Everything's all good. But then you run into a problem like we're dealing with today, and suddenly the money, it runs out. It's really not there anymore. The income isn't there. The revenue is not coming in. That has an impact on what's going on with Airbnb as well, because they're going to make money off of the people that are staying there. They're making their commissions, and it's profitable for both parties. Apparently, there was supposed to be a bailout for the super hosts. From what I understand, it never materialized. But when you look at this data, it shows you what's been happening with the real estate industry. See, these places right now, they're just sitting empty all over the world. You've got these real estate properties, you've got hotels, you've got rental cars, so many other things that are just sitting there rotting. And that tells you that we've got a problem underlying this that cannot be resolved simply by the Federal Reserve printing money and buying treasuries and buying mortgage-backed securities. It isn't going to fix it. This happens in the commercial markets, of course. This happens in the residential. The tourism is down so significantly right now, and that's putting pressure on things like Airbnb. So if Airbnb were to fail, it's not a big deal. But what it represents behind that, this is the issue. So that's my summary. Let's move on. Another one bites the dust. J.Crew is preparing for a bankruptcy filing that could come this weekend. So this is just one more to add to the list. We saw Saks Fifth Avenue, the parent, I believe, is having trouble paying money. The stores aren't open. How are they going to bring the money in, right? JCPenney, Sears before that, dealing with their own issues. All of these retail locations are going to be decimated. That's a problem for the company. That's a problem for the shareholders. That's a problem for the people that work the jobs at these locations, and of course the other jobs in the periphery. I've covered that many times before. But in line with that, you've got the derivatives. All of these different real estate investment trusts is one very, very good example that people need to know about. So you've got a lot of investment in these with the commercial real estate investment trusts. And what do you think is going to happen when these places are sitting empty? The malls is just terrible. I can't believe it. One of the big investors out there was saying you should buy into this because the malls are going to take off. I don't know what world this individual is living on. Maybe he's already flown off to Mars and he's looking from outer space. It just doesn't make sense to me. This is what we've got to look at, because this is going to impact a lot of these funds that own that. And then you start to see the unraveling that takes place. Jim Cramer says his most trusted indicator, quote, makes me concerned about the market's trajectory. And he's looking at the short range oscillator. That's the one I swear by. Anything above +5 is overbought. A 7.2 reading makes me concerned. Of course, he's actually highlighting the truth in this case here. When you look at how fast the market has come up, despite all the bad news, there's a problem. But essentially what we're seeing here is let's get on the back of the Federal Reserve and ride this sky high. We'll see what happens. Boeing raises monster $25 billion in bond offering, rules out federal aid. Now, the investors that are putting in money here, I know some people, if they're just skimming over this, they might think to themselves, well, this is a company that is going to be around for sure. That's why they put money into the bonds. That's why they buy their stocks. You got to think of this for a second here. Yes, it looks very likely that they will not allow a company like Boeing to fail. If they didn't get money through this bond offering, chances are they would have went to the government, got on their hands and knees, and done whatever they needed to do. But look, for example, at Argentina, where the bonds were oversubscribed. 100-year, the century bond out of Argentina that immediately was oversubscribed, but they started to devalue immediately. And right now, what's even happening with that? I need to give you an update. I haven't looked at it in a while, but it became a joke. So just because we see news like this shouldn't give you confidence. It should be that investors have a risk appetite in a time when they should be more cautious. And now to finish off the video, ECB says it's ready to increase stimulus as Eurozone posts worst GDP since the records began. They have contracted significantly, as we've seen with the US, as everywhere around the world has noted basically the same information. They're going to pad the information. They're not going to give you the real data, but we know the direction, and that is down. I think it's very important to see the response to all of this because it's never actually to benefit the many, it's only to benefit the few. The expansion of the balance sheet has never once actually benefited anybody other than those in the 0.001%, and that's what this is all about. When you see the creation of the Federal Reserve, how it was done, understand that your entire paradigm will completely shift, and that is so true for anybody who has read The Creature from Jekyll Island, just as one example. Well, that's enough ranting for one day. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. It really helps to support me. Thank you. If you want to check me out on Instagram and Twitter, I'm there, and every other platform, just search The Money GPS. Selling online is big. In fact, it's huge. If you want to learn for free, check me out at theamazongps.com. If you want to learn the financial system, top to bottom, I've got 2 books that break it down very, very simply. Take a look at the link in the description if you want the audiobook, themoneygps.com. This video is absolutely jam-packed with information. You have to watch it if you haven't already. Click on it. I'll see you there.